What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I'm bringing you a profile combination that a lot of you have been asking for, and today it is the combination of Invoked Blue Eyes. Now the reason I'm titling this one Invoked Blue Eyes rather than Blue Eyes Invoked is there are actually more Invoked cards than there are Blue Eyes cards, and I think that's the fairest way to title a deck profile as to not be misleading. Now, if you want to see a test hand combo video for this deck and see how this deck tries to operate and function, then get the video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, which I highly expect you will do, and I'll bring it for you anyway. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this hybrid, show you why it works. We already know how the original Invoked Blue Eyes used to work because normal summon Alistair, search out Invocation, link Alistair off into the Blue Eyes Link 1, and then you'd start to build from there. Whereas in this version, the extra deck can get very, very tight because there's a lot of new invoked monsters that you want to be able to summon. The consistency in the main deck has gotten better because you've got the Remnants and of course you've got Alistair the Invoker. Another nice thing that can happen as well is that Blue Eyes can technically bridge into Invoked because what you do is you use your Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon to go into the Ancient Fairy Dragon, destroy your Mausoleum of White and get you into your access of the Magical Meltdown. The only issue with that one is by the time you've done that point, you've already used your main normal summon, so you need a couple of extra cards to help you do it that way as well, which is why it's not the direct way to go, but it can sometimes give you a nice bit of follow-up if you need it. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. For the Invoked cards, straight away, we're going to be maxing out on the Remnants. Pretty straightforward and simple on this one. This is the new version of Alistair the Invoker. So for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Invoked cards, if this card is in the hand, you get to target any spellcaster or a fusion monster on the field. Special on this card, and if you do, that target monster gains 1000 attack. And it's actually quite interesting because it technically means that if you wanted to, you could still play Almirage. Because you'd go normal summon like any of your Sage of Eyes Blue, Maiden of White, and then you can still use Alistair the Remnants to extend. Then, of course, you can link off into Almirage. Honestly, at that point, you don't need to, because what you'd actually end up doing is you'd link off your Alistair plus whatever normal summon you've chosen to. And if you don't need to go into the Spirit of White, you'd actually go into the Alistair the Invoker of Madness and still pretty much get you exactly where you need to go. So on top of that one is if this card is normal or specialed or flip face up, you get to banish one invoked monster from your extra deck to add one invocation or a spell that mentions it from the deck to the hand. So that's how you're going to be able to get you more consistency to your fusion plays. Then of course we do have the classic Alistair the Invoker. On normal summon, annoyingly, or flip summon, you get to add an invocation directly from the deck to the hand. Pretty straightforward. Then for the Magical Meltdown, I wanted to show this one off because we're only going to play 2 in a Terraforming, just because of that Blue Eyes bridge. And honestly, what I like about Terraforming is it can get you to Mausoleum if your opponent stops you getting there. And that's the biggest choke point of this deck, is if you get locked under your own spirit, where you're locked into dragons, it shuts everything off. So it can get very, very tricky, which is why you need to be very, very careful. Then we've got 2 invocations, 2 invocation sword, both incredibly powerful as another. So Magical Meltdown is when this card is activated, you add an Alistair the Invoker, specifically the old one, not the new one sadly, from the deck to the hand. The activation of your cards and effects that include the effect to fusion summon a fusion monster cannot be negated. That's all of your card effects that fusion summon a monster, and as a bit of a preview, we are also playing Ultimate Fusion, which I'll talk about when we get to it. So that can mean it can't be negated. And then on top of that as well, your opponent's cards cannot be activated. Card effects cannot be activated when a monster is fusion summoned, which means that they can't trigger an effect on their summon window, which is really, really important, because if they had something like a Bottomless, for example, retro, but just giving you that as an example, they can't use it. Then moving on to the classic Invocation. This lets you fusion summon any fusion monster from your extra deck by using monsters from the hand as material. But if you're summoning an invoked fusion monster this way, you can also banish monsters from the field and or either player's graveyard as material. If this card's in the graveyard, you get to target one of your banished Alistair the Invokers and then shuffle it back into the deck, back into the deck and then add the Alistair back to the hand. Alistair the Invoker also has a really nice effect that you can discard it to boost any of your fusion monsters by 1000. What fusion monster do Blue Eyes play that can attack all of your opponent's monsters once each? Very, very nicely. So that could also be quite helpful. Invocation Sword is basically the opposite of Invocation, in the sense that you can fusion summon any fusion monster from the extra deck, but use monsters you control. If you're summoning an invoked fusion monster this way, you can also return monsters from any banishment to the graveyard as material. During your main phase, if this card is in the graveyard, you get to target one Alistair monster or an invocation card in your graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, add that, shuffle this into the deck, and if you do, add that target to your hand. So again, it's just more ways to get you access to your Alistair monster. Then for the penultimate monster for the Invoke side, 2 Ice, the Divine Spirit of the Law, and we're also playing 2 Sacred Spirit of Ice. The idea is that these cards all lead you to Alistair. That's what you're trying to do. So the Sacred Spirit Sword of Ice, it lets you activate one of the following effects. You special on 1 of Ice from the deck or graveyard, or you can take an Alistair monster from the deck and either send it to the graveyard or banish it, or you can look at 3 random face-down cards from your opponent's extra deck, and if you do, banish one of them. So you can get extra deck knowledge if you don't need access to your Alistair, which can still be quite useful. The Ice Divine Spirit of the Law lets you banish this card from the hand or field to add 1 Alistair monster from your deck to the hand. Then if this effect was activated on the field, immediately after the effect resolves, you get to normal summon 1 spellcaster monster. So that can give you an additional normal summon of direct access to any of your spellcaster monsters, including Sage or Maiden. Obviously, more times than not, it will be Sage. And the fact that it normal summons them as well is very, very important, because Sage also only triggers on normal summon. But this is another way that if you do open up with Root to the Ice, mainly coming from the field, so it means you have to open up the sword, which if you wanted to, you could play 3 sword and 1 of Ice to give you that balance of consistency to get to this card over the Ice. Then that's also how you can bridge from your Invoked, but you would have already bridged from the Invoked. It'll be one of them ones where it's like, if you've only opened up this and you get access to this, but then this still adds you the Alistair. So regardless, you get to normal summon 1 spellcaster monster, and then if a face-up fusion monster you control is sent to the graveyard except by battle, while this card is in the graveyard and except during damage step, you get to special on this card. Then you can fusion summon 1 Invoke monster from your extra deck using monsters from the hand or field. So very, very important and consistent as well. And it's a nice 2k attack and 2800 defense, so very, very defensive. The final Invoked monster that we play is the one for Khan, the Divine Spirit of Artiface. This is just a searchable card that can be summoned to the field as long as you've got Alistair in the grave or on the field, and then it can become a reactive negate, which can be very, very important. The other card that you would search out, because usually you'll search this out with your Bay Baron. The other card is the Gamma Summon, and I've actually moved most of the track cards to the side deck, because usually your first search you're going to go for the Vicam, and then the second search maybe you'll do the Gammon Summon, but I bet it's better when you know you're 100% going first as well. And it's the same with Majesty, which feels a bit weird not having Majesty in the main deck for Blue Eyes, but there is a reason for that, and I'll explain it when we get to it. So then moving on to the Blue Eyes section of the deck. I'm on 2 Blue Eyes White Dragon, more than enough, absolutely fine. 3 Sage with Eyes of Blue, pretty standard on that particular lineup. The only difference is I'm on 2 Maiden. Now, I could afford to play 3 if you want to, but this is a 42 card deck. It can get a little bit tight, but this does give you the option. If you open up the Sage of Eyes of Blue and your opponent interacts with it, you get access to Maiden. More times than not, if you open up with Sage of Eyes of Blue and Alistair the Invoker, chances are you're probably going to go down the Alistair route. It is a little bit more defensive for you, and it will bait out more interactions than the Sage of Eyes of Blue will. The last card, level 1 tuner, that's not a hand interaction that we play, is the one Rotary. So this is another way, along with the Ice, where you can get an additional normal summon of something like your Sage, which then means you still maintain your main normal summon if you were to bridge into Alistair the Invoker, which you would do through Magical Meltdown and Ancient Fairy Dragon, which comes off the back of Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. So there's a lot of little bits of synergy, and I still like Rotary because it's another one of them cards. If you open it up, people are like, oh, they're on cool tunes, and then as soon as you reveal the other one, they're like, what the heck is going on? And then the second you do all of your Blue Eyes kind of combo and they interact with it, and then you just go, cool. Normal summon Alistair the Invoker, they're going to be like, what just happened? So yeah. Another way you can get to Rotary is by playing 3 Wishes for Eyes of Blue. Pretty standard on that one. The one Mausoleum. I still got 1 Raw of the Blue-Eyed Dragon. It's just those times that when you do activate it, it wants to be one of the last things you do, but it will give you access to that Synchro level 9. Honestly, I don't think you need to have it in the main. It's one of them ones that's teetering on the edge as to whether I play it or not. The penultimate, or the last spell, but penultimate Blue Eyes card we play is the one Ultimate Fusion. Now, this is in place of Majesty. You can very easily still play Majesty, but what I liked about Ultimate Fusion is because the extra deck was so tight, there were certain cards that I had to cut down on. And what Ultimate Fusion does is that during the main phase, you get to fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck that mentions Blue Eyes White Dragon or Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, which in this scenario, the only one you're ever going to summon this way is going to be your Tyrant Dragon. But Tyrant Dragon lists Blue Eyes White Dragon and then any dragon monster. So this will allow you to shuffle the fusion monsters listed on it from the hand, field, and or graveyard back into the deck, then destroy face-up cards your opponent controls up to number of Blue Eyes White Dragon and Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragons used from the field as material. So the reason I like this over Majesty is that technically with True Light, you'll still get Blue Eyes to the field. You then activate the Ultimate Fusion, you put the Blue Eyes from the field back into the deck, you put the Dragon from the graveyard, which depending on what your last card you choose to play in your extra deck is, and I'll explain that later on, it's very important that your primary will be your Blue Eyes Spirit Dragon. This goes back into the extra deck, you get Tyrant Dragon, you'll get one pop off the back of the Ultimate Fusion, which is one less than Majesty, but still gets you everything you need to, and that can pretty much do the pseudo job you need. If you side in Majesty, absolutely fine. Of course, there are other ways to fusion summon into the Tyrant Dragon, but this one kind of did the two jobs that I needed it to do, one being the recycle, but one also maintaining that ability to disrupt like Majesty does. Then for the non-engine, pretty standard on this one. We've got 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Springs, 3 Molchommy Fool Losses. I'm on the main deck of 2 Droll and Lockbirds. This is entirely like down to the environment you're going to. I still think the Droll and Lockbird is an incredibly powerful card, and people that think it's in the side deck will get hit most of it when it's in the main deck. But you can very easily either cut these 2 out, put your deck down to 40, or you can side them out for, or like trade them out for Ghost Ogres, Perulias, Bells, whatever fits your fancy. And the last card we've got is the one Effect Veiler. Just on those scenarios where you've already got everything you need, your Sage becomes a guaranteed searchable disruption, which can put in a lot of work. And then the one card that I have skipped over the entire time is the one True Light. People have probably like looked through the spells and gone, yeah, you're missing True Light. So there's True Light. It was to one side. But yeah, that's your 42nd card. That should be everything you need for this hybrid of the deck in the main deck. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the extra deck, which is very, very tight, but it does give you a bit of flexibility depending on what you want to try and achieve and what you want to try and get to. So starting with the extra deck, let's start off with the Invoked cards themselves. So you're going to play the 1 Sarath, you're going to play the 1 Bay Baron, and then you're also going to play the 1 Oceanus. There are 2 other cards that are, well, one more card that is one of the brand new cards, but I'm just going to give you the bullet points of each of these before we branch into those. So the Sarath requires Alistair monster and then a fire or a wind, which is where Purgatorio becomes a little bit more consistent, which is why it could very easily be the 15th card in the deck if you want it to. During the main phase, quick effect, target 1 level 6 or lower monster in either graveyard and special summon it to the field in defense position, then negate its effects. If this card is in the graveyard, you get to fusion summon 1 invoked fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing this card from the grave and monsters from your field or graveyard as material. Bay Baron requires an Alistair monster and then a light or earth monster, so that's where your lights are going to come into play a little bit more. If it is special summons, you get to add a Vikam the Divine Spirit or a Gamma summon from the deck to the hand. Then you can banish 1 monster from either graveyard. You can banish this card from the graveyard to then target a fusion monster you control. Monsters your opponent controls currently lose attack equal to that targeted monster's attack until the end of the turn. So again, it's another way of making your Tyrant Dragon just even stronger. But the idea is this searches you out the Vikam can then be an extender and off you go. The Oceanus is one of your endpoints. You're either going to end on that or you're going to end on the other monster being the Hyper Invoked Aeon, which we will play 2 of, and I'll explain that when we get to it. So this requires Alistair plus a dark or a water. It can be very, very tricky because the only other darks you play are your invoked monsters anyway, so you need to open up both your invoked Alistairs in order to get to it. But while this card is in the main monster zone, your opponent's monsters cannot target monsters for attack except this one. While this card is in the extra monster zone, any monster sent to your opponent's graveyard is banished instead. You can banish this card from the graveyard to target a fusion monster you control, and it can attack directly this turn. The Hyper Invoked Aeon requires 2 fusion monsters with different attributes. And again, you want to be using 3 different fusion monsters with different attributes. If this card is fusion summoned, you get to banish cards from the field and or graveyards up to the number of monsters used as material. So doesn't matter which ones, if you only use 2, you banish 2. The reason you want to use 3, because then if you use 3 or more monsters, you get to look at your opponent's extra deck and banish 3 cards from it. You have a quick effect to declare 1 attribute. All other monsters on the field become that attribute until the end of this turn, but you can only use 1 effect per turn, which means you're either banishing and ripping from the extra deck, or you're adapting the attribute. For the final invoked monsters, we're playing the classic Invoked Macabre. In the normal version, or the older version of Blue Eyes Invoked, you'd play multiple Macabres, because that's the one you would go to early doors. We've then got the 1 Invoked Elysium, so it requires an invoked monster and then a monster that's special from the extra deck. It's treated as all type of material, all type of attributes, and then you get a quick effect. You get to target 1 invoked monster you control or in your graveyard and banish it, and then you banish all monsters your opponent controls with the same attribute as that monster. The Macabre has a quick effect that when your opponent activates a spell, trap card, or monster effect, you get to send the same type of card, monster, spell, or trap from the hand to the grave, negate the activation if you do banish it. And then the final Invoke monster is Alistair, the Invoker of Madness. So 2 monsters with different types and attributes. So the only issue is to get into this when you're using your Blue Eyes monsters early doors is that they are spellcaster lights and all your Alistairs are spellcaster darks. So it's still very awkward to get into this, which is why in my 15th card I am tempting to use Proxy F. Very, very tempted by this card, and I'll explain the 15th card when I get to it. But the idea is this card's name becomes Alistair the Invoker while on the field or in the graveyard. If this monster is fusion summoned while you control this monster, you get to discard a card, and if you do, add an invocation or Book of the Law from the deck to the hand. If this face-up card you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you get to add an Omega Summon from the deck to the hand. Now, we're not playing Book of the Law, we're not playing Omega Summon. The idea is it's just another way to get you access to an invocation, because apart from the shuffle back effect, invocation is not a once per turn. Now to move on to the Blue Eyes cards. So we've got the one Spirit with Eyes of Blue. This is probably the most awkward one when it does Dragon Lock you. So you do need to resolve his effect to tribute it off to bring back the Blue Eyes. Now, as long as there is a Blue Eyes in the graveyard, you can still tribute it off even if it's negated, and that will get you out of the Dragon Lock, which sometimes you might have to do. Then we've got the one fusion monster in the form of the Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon. So this one lets you attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, and then once per turn at the end of the damage set, if it battled, you get to target a trap card in your graveyard and reset it. Now obviously we're not playing loads of trap cards in the main deck, so that effect is a little less relevant, and that's where Majesty comes into play, because looping that resource is insane. But the idea is if you get to attack with this, because you've got the Invokes backing it up, you should be able to win from that point on. And then we've got the one Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, and then I've got his 2 targets that you're going to want to summon. So one is if you've already got access to Magical Meltdown or you can't use the Magical Meltdown bridge, you'd go Blue Eye Spirit Dragon during your opponent's turn into the Blue Eyes Ultimate Spirit Dragon. If you want to get the bridge, the card you go for is your Ancient Fairy Dragon. And then once you've got that bridge and use the Ancient Fairy Dragon, all you then need is another level 1 tuner, and that will then allow you to put that with the tuner with the Ancient Fairy Dragon to go into Crystal Wing. So that's just a way of still giving you a defensive option, and this is still actually quite good for going second, and can actually be very, very powerful against Ritual Light and Darkness. So that is 14 cards, just to make it completely clear. That's only 14 cards in the extra deck. Now the reason it's only 14 cards is that the last card slot is where it gets very, very tricky. So, for the last card slots, my temptation to includes Proxy F Magician. So just, again, a little bit more generic than the Alistair, the Invoker of Madness. It lets you fusion summon a fusion monster from the extra deck using monsters from your field as fusion material. And then if you fusion summon a fusion monster to a zone this card points to, you get to special summon a monster with 1,000 or less attack from the hand. So sometimes it can help you get that tuner on the field. It really depends. The Blue Eyes Ultimate, just because being able to equip this with wishes, not only does it get wishes out of the graveyard, which means you can search another copy, it also sets you up with targeted protection. If you try to, or if you want to use Majesty instead of Ultimate Fusion, then you can play a second copy of the Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, because in doing so, it means you don't need to rely on the recycle as much. One other thing that I felt was missing, which is another consideration, is the Ancient Fairy Life Dragon, just so that I had a way to use Blue Eye Spirit Dragon going second to give me that final push for aggression by being able to attack this in defense position. But again, entirely up to you. It's down to preference. It's one of the ones that I'm considering. The other card you can consider as well is Kaliga. So this is your more Floodgate-esque monster. I would prefer to have this in the side deck. I don't think you need Purgatrio in this version because you've got your Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon doing the same thing, just without the piercing battle damage. And then the only other thing to consider would be the Almirage. And the reason I would consider the Almirage is that in that exact combo, or the example that I mentioned with you, where you can use Alistair the Remnants to boost up one of your Blue Eyes, whether it be Sage or Maiden, then you would have to turn Sage or Maiden, which would have 1,000 attack and still be a normal summon monster, into Almirage. And that's your 2 different attributes, 2 different types that then let you go into Alistair the Invoker of Madness. So this is the one that is probably the most effective when that type of bridge combo comes up. But again, more times than not, what you're doing, if you normal summon down Sage and it resolves, you're probably going to turn that into the Blue Eye Spirit Dragon, make your plays there, and then the Alistair the Remnants doesn't join the field until later on, because you'd go through all your Blue Eyes plays, and then at a certain point, once you've got that extra monster on the field, that's when you'd utilize your Alistair the Remnants to then be able to bring itself to the field, grab your Invocation, add a Macabre, and then build on from there. So there are other cards as well to consider. So like these are the other Blue Eyes cards you can kind of take into account. So you've got your Hieratic Seals, you've got your Crimson Dragon, you've got your SP Little Knight. The issue with Crimson Dragon is that to make it effective, you need to have at least one more level 12, whether that be the Stardust of Surf or a Cosmic Blazer, probably Stardust Surf, but then straight away you're taking up 2 more slots. So the question is, you'd use 1 random slot here, but then what else would you take out from that 15 card extra deck in order to get it into rotation? So there is that final bit of narrowing down exactly what works and what is going to be the most required in the deck. So that's something that you definitely need to consider. Like I said, I feel that the one that is the most likely, that might come up the most, might be Almirage, but then I feel that I could very easily risk it and play other cards instead, just to kind of give you a different approach and a different angle. Anyway, that is it for the entire profile. Hopefully this has given you a bit of an idea on the hybrid and the approach to kind of take now. Yes, like I've already mentioned, you can take it back to old school Blue Eyes, where you don't rely on the extra deck monsters of the Alistairs. You could cut down the Invocation Sword down to 1. You could cut the original Invocation down to 1, just because how easily searchable it is. And then I would definitely advise still playing the Sacred Sword. You could consider cutting the Vikam as well if you wanted to, but then you would really start to rely... I mean, if you cut the Vikam, then you open up the Bay Baron slot and you don't need to use the Bay Baron. Probably the best new one, honestly, is the Seraph, which again is just another reason why I feel that Almirage might be that missing piece as the 15th card. But again, still a lot more testing to do, a lot more kind of trial and error to kind of finalize it down, but I got the list where I kind of needed it to be to share with you guys, and then usually for the final step, you lot will give me some suggestions in the comments down below, and I'll be like, oh, that's a really cool idea, that's how I can improve it, and that's how I can get it over the final hurdle to make it work. But like I said at the start of the video, if you want to see a test and combo video for this deck, then get the video above 50 likes in the first 24 hours, and I'll be more than happy to bring it for you, so you can see how it currently works and how it starts to function as it stands. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.